Hello, Waypoint partners. This is Tim Cole with Waypoint, and I'm shooting this video today to share with you just all the different kind of great ideas that churches across our region are having to strategically shepherd those that are in their church during this crazy time with the coronavirus and how it is isolating our church body, and we're having to be proactive in the way that we're connecting with them. So I sent an email out a couple of days ago just asking, hey, what are you doing? And just received a tremendous amount of feedback from dozens and dozens of churches about what they're doing. And I want to share with you a number of the more strategic answers or creative answers to that. A lot of them had very similar information about having to go to online services. So that's the big picture of how they're connecting with the most people, but really going into shepherding groups where the elders typically and the staff are assigned to a group of people that they're making sure are connecting assertively with those people on the list during the week or every other week or something like that. So I want to share with you some of the more different answers that I'm getting, or different twists on a particular answer that we got from some churches, kind of in not any particular order, just kind of a running list of the ones that I made note of as people replied back to my email. And I think it could really help us in this really crazy time that we are now isolated. 17 days ago, we were doing church as normal, and then, or 18 days ago, and now things have really changed. And it's causing us to ask some really good questions, I think positive questions about the way we're doing church and the way we're shepherding our flock and reaching out and connecting. And so, of course, most of the churches, their replies were those typical things, but here's some of the twists that we would have. I love what Jason Yates said from the East 10th Street Church in North Carolina about sending not just emails or text messages, but voice memos. You can record a voice memo to a person, and even when you're just in texting, you can choose a recording in your text interface. And so it's very easy to record, hey, Sally, it's great to connect with you today via text. And so when they get that text, they click on it and they hear you talk, which is always better than just text only. That's part of the whole communication line. Is if you can do it visually, that's the best. Then audibly, that's the next best. And then text is the third best. And so any way that you can elevate that, so if you can FaceTime with people or however you can do that, that's good. But I love that idea. And you can leave voice messages, even video messages. Rick Rain's church, Fairmount Church in Richmond, Mechanicsville, Virginia, made sure that for a large church that they're in, that they quickly delegated all the people over 70 in their church, and that they were contacted immediately by staff and elders. But also they're reaching out to anybody that's a family member of those that are shut in or in hospitals or in nursing homes, because their reality is different than those of ours who are just sheltering in place, sheltering at home because of a family member that's even more restrictive scenario. And so they're being contacted and ministered to specifically. Butch Pretty from the Laurel Avenue Church talked about that they are making communion locally and then delivering that to the front doorstep of people in the church with juice and bread in advance of Sunday morning, unleavened bread. And it's a personal connection because they get to text with the person, hey, we left it on your doorstep. And so it's a way to almost physically be there, and rather than just being this distant text off in tech world, that you've physically driven to their house, even though you weren't able to see each other face to face. So there's a number of churches that we heard from that are making communion and delivering communion. Kind of like my dad years ago as an elder, elders would deliver communion to shut-ins. Well, we're all shut in, and so we're delivering communion to all of us shut-ins. And I think that's a great idea. Another one that Steve Daly told us, who's at the Burlington Church in Burlington, North Carolina, talked about rotating their contacts rather than an elder having these 20 families that he's going to contact every week, or the small group leaders that they're going to rotate which elder or which leader you hear from every week, so that you're being exposed to, or not exposed to, but contacted by a different elder every week. And I thought that's a great twist on a way to do that, so that you're hearing from different people in the church rather than the same one every time. Scott Klein from the Life Point Church in Toano talked about, as many of us are, learning how to use Zoom or other interfaces like that to have meetings. but particularly meetings with the leaders, equipping and training them to do this. So rather than just having Zoom meetings for the general population in your church, having specific meetings for your leaders for casting vision, holding each other accountable, and equipping them to do the work of the church, which is the great opportunity that we see in all of this coronavirus pandemic, is that the church is having to ask questions about how should we be doing church in the first place. And so they're having leader meetings. Of course, a lot of churches are having elders meetings now online, which is going to have a residual impact after this is all blown over in weeks or months, is that elders can meet without having to be at the building, along with a lot of other groups. Scott Carter from the Cherry Avenue Church in Charlottesville was talking about having men's Bible studies on Zoom this week for the first time. And so a lot of our discipleship classes don't need to be postponed, but just transitioned to online meetings. I was part of an online D group just a couple of weeks ago with one of our church planters who they all commute to work in the DC area. And so from like 7 to 7:15, they connect via Zoom, and I got to give a devotion on their weekly touch base on Tuesday morning. So we've got opportunities to do things like that. Rob Perry at the Life Point Church in Raleigh specifically talked about that about 67% of their church is connected in groups or serving in some way. And so they've delegated how all those people are going to be contacted. But then the 33% that count Life Point as their church home but aren't connected in a leadership or a group, are you tracking those two different things? And so they divided those 33%, a third of the church that really is barely connected to the staff, to make special connections. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity we have during at this time to be making connections with the people that are less connected in our church. That's going to have an impact once this all blows over, that they're going to feel more connected to your church family potentially than they ever have before. Dave Faith from the Williamsburg Church, Williamsburg Christian, sent me an example of the communication plan that they had distributed to all their church. And so I think that's really important. And a number of your churches have done that. That says this is the way we're going to be communicating, rather than people contacting you saying, hey, how can we be connected? For you to take the leadership role and say, here's how we're going to be connecting with you in these different ways, so that they're not having to fill in the blanks themselves. I think it would be a great opportunity to put that in the snail mail as well, rather than just emails or videos, because our emails and video connections are just blown up right now with lots of updates. And so to get one snail mail might actually be the best way to do it. Jamie Hatfield from the Living Water Church in Salem, I love their ideas. They've distributed all those people that aren't connected at their church very well not to the elders, but the elders are overseeing those that are hopefully future elders. And so they are apprenticing their future elders by getting them involved in the shepherding now. And I love the forward thinking of that, about taking advantage of this opportunity for developing our next crew of elders for years to come. That's a great idea. Eric Evans from the Salem Church right up the road from Living Water said that they are assertively trying to teach their seniors how to use Facebook and Zoom, rather than just saying log in and figure it out on your own. Is they are strategizing on how they can help the seniors that aren't comfortable with the video interfaces to be comfortable with it, so that they can be connecting in all the ways that the younger crowd is already being connected in. Cameron Bailey at the Cambridge Church here in Virginia, one of our board of directors, had an interesting way to connect. Since we're not allowed to have large gatherings, is their church is having gatherings on Sunday morning. They're out in the country where there's still people that don't have internet or good enough internet to do all the online stuff. And so they're having gatherings in their auditorium and their fellowship hall on the hour on Sundays, where there are only 9 people in the room at a time, including one elder. And so you kind of have to sign up for a slot, but you can still come to church and worship because you can't watch it online. I think that's a great creative idea about a way to do that. And they are one of 4 churches that I've communicated with just in the last couple of days that are considering or planning on how to do drive-in church, to where people will feel connected by coming together, gathering together, by gathering in the parking lot, doing a radio broadcast or just loudspeakers, and everyone stay in their own cars. And so that's an interesting idea. I think for Easter is if you can get a parking lot large enough You can get a local FM station that you pay. That's just very simple process to do that. And people, I think, are going to be so stir crazy to get out of their house that they'd be thrilled to come to Easter on Sunday morning, sit in the parking lot, and have a band and preaching from some kind of outdoor stage that you would set up. I think that's a great idea. Steve Franklin at the Journey Church in Midlothian talked about this is an opportunity that they have for their entire database, not just those who are connected in a small group or serving, or those that are regular attenders but not in, but they've got a large database, and they are assertively recruiting volunteers in the church to connect with people who are in the database that have not been to church in a long time. And they're asking them questions like, is there any way we can pray for you? Do you still count us as your church home? And also, do we have your information correct? And things like that. How can we be serving you? And so that's an opportunity here that you might not normally follow up with all the people in your database that you might not have seen in a while, to use this as an opportunity to connect with them and say, hey, are you still part of our church? We want to help and be a part of what's going on right now. That's a great idea. Greg Jennings at the Common Ground Church in Fredericksburg, one of our church plants, talked about that they have told their church to set aside 7 p.m. on Wednesdays as the church connection time. And they gave it a name, but the idea is to make sure everybody knows that during that time, we might have a variety of things going on, but the whole church knows that's kind of our shepherding time as a church. And so they've let them know to do that. That's a good idea. Stacy Burkholder, the outreach minister at Bridge Church in Fishersville, Virginia, took this to a whole new level, I think, where they sent out a video to the church body recently saying, how can we make this an outreach event, not just an in-reach event? Can you think of 10 people in your sphere of influence that you could invite to join our online services? How can we run errands for you? And you physically make a list of 10 people in your area that you can pray about and care for and share your faith with during this time. All of those things don't get postponed until we get back to church as usual, that all the more we should be praying and sharing and caring now. And so I love that way to take this to a whole nother level of outreach rather than only in reach. So we've had a great response to churches taking advantage of the opportunity to ask, how can we be the church we ought to be in the first place? And so thanks for your input on that. And we hope that you continue making great strides in shepherding those that are in your church and taking care of those that are even outside of your church. Have a great week.